Here's a question I want to sit with before we get into anything today. When was the last time you blamed a tool for a problem that was actually a design problem? Because I think that's where what's happening right now with AI in education. We're blaming the tool, and I'm not sure that's the right move. We've got teachers out there right now trying to AI-proof assignments that were already broken, to be honest with you, before AI showed up. And I'm just going to say it. If a chatbot can do your assignment better, faster, and cleaner than your students, that assignment wasn't asking your students to think in the first place. I know that's not comfortable, but it's honest. And before anybody takes this the wrong way, I need to say this clearly and authoritatively. It's English. Teachers are doing some amazing work right now. And they're doing that work inside of pacing guides, inside of this initiative and that initiative, inside of some canned curriculum that your district bought, and with time pressure that most people on the outside of a classroom have never had to manage. So this is no means a shot at teachers, admins, or teaching styles. It's just kind of about where we are right now and what has changed around us. And we've been here before. Calculators, Google, YouTube, same panic, same argument, same mistake. We blame the tool because it's easier than redesigning the work. If you don't know who I am, I'm Dan Thomas. I'm the host of the Tech Ed Clubhouse podcast, and today we're doing a solo episode because something happened last week that I wanted to talk about. I got tagged in a post. And then I found out that I was cited by name in the article. The author and a friend of mine, Dustin Remy, over at a site called Teachers Playground, wrote a piece called "We Blamed Google, Now We're Blaming AI. We Need to Stop." And he used something that I'd posted as part of his argument. Well, what I said was, AI is exposing a hard truth. If a student can complete an assignment without thinking, it's not a strong assignment. Not an AI problem, a design problem. That's what I said. If you want to go look at that, I'll link that article in the show notes. I highly recommend you go read this article and follow Dustin. It's going to be well worth your time. And I'll be honest with you about that. When I saw that article and I saw that posting, two things hit me at the same time. First, I was surprised. You put something out there and you never really know how it lands. And it must have struck something with Dustin because he took the time to write an amazing article about it. And secondly, this is kind of the bigger one for me and a little selfish. I felt validated because what Dustin wrote in his art is the argument I've been making in classrooms for 32 years, some of it without knowing that's the argument I was making. And when you see your own thinking show up in someone else's published article, you realize the conversation's finally catching up. So I figured, let's talk about it. So today I'm going to dig into that article, tell you what I think he gets right, share what I've been seeing in classrooms for more than 3 decades that connects to it, and more importantly, give you something practical to walk away with that you can use tomorrow. Because I don't want this to just be a commentary and me talking. I want you to have something you can use in class. Welcome to the Tech Ed Clubhouse podcast. So let's go back a moment, because this isn't the first time this happened. Think back to whether you were in the classroom as a student or in the classroom as a teacher and calculators showed up. People panicked. The argument was, if students can just punch in the numbers, why do they need to learn math? Right? If students add, subtract, multiply, and divide using a device, they're going to not have that thinking skill. And some of that happened, right? But we changed, right? We changed the way we taught math. And I think about what as a 7th grade teacher, I think about what my 7th graders could do with the calculator that we weren't able to do in 7th grade before. We were able to do some deeper, higher level thinking. And then Google showed up, right? And people panicked. The argument was, if students can search for anything, why are we learning it? And each time we adjusted, right? Because, they're thinking kids are just going to copy and paste. They're going to go to Google. They're going to go to Wikipedia. They're going to go to this site. They're going to go to that site, right? And they're going to just copy and paste. And they did. They did. They still do, right? It's okay. But we adjusted. We shifted from computation, just adding and subtracting numbers. And if you really want to see a great thought process behind all this, go watch Hidden Figures. Great movie that talks about math and problem solving. Right? So we shifted from computation to reasoning, from access to information to what to do with it. And now AI shows up. And we're all over here acting like this is something new. I'm here to tell you it's not. The teachers that figured out Google weren't the ones who banned it, right? They were the ones who just handed every kid a Chromebook and called it innovation. They were the ones who asked different questions. They weren't asking, how do we stop the kids from Googling it, right? Some people did. But given that they can find anything in 10 seconds, here's kind of the question. Given that they can find anything in 10 seconds, what's actually worth my time to teach them? I was allowed to do this, didn't have that canned curriculum. That question saved a generation of classrooms, and we learned it slowly, imperfectly, but we learned it, right? We changed the way we taught. And then AI shows up. AI hits the scene. I believe it was like November of 2023 when it really kind of burst on the scene. It's been there for a while before that, by the way. And we forgot everything. Again. And Rimney quotes in there, we patched the hole instead of fixing the roof. And now AI has ripped that patch off entirely. And we're standing in the rain wondering how this happened. And he's right, but I'll add to it. We didn't just patch the hole. We convinced ourselves that that patch was renovation. We took worksheets and we moved them to Google Docs. We took our lectures from our overhead projectors and we put them on slide decks. And we called it tech integration. It wasn't. It was the same thinking dressed up in a different medium, right? What AI's done is it's just made that impossible to pretend around. But here's what I want to add to Dustin's argument, because I don't think the story ends with the problem. I think, and I'll shout this from the rooftops, I think we're at the beginning of something. A moment where the conversation about what school is actually for is finally catching up to what teachers have always known. Thinking is the work, not compliance, not reproduction. Thinking. And for the first time in my 32 years of being in education, that argument is starting to get some institutional backing. New York State has officially adopted the portrait of a graduate. It's a framework that says we want our students to be able to do not just what they've been able to recall on a Friday test. Things like critical thinker, creative innovator, effective communicator. It's not a wish list. That's policy. And if that's the destination, then this conversation about AI and assignment design isn't a crisis. I like to call it a compass. And if you want some more information about the New York State Portrait of a Graduate, adopted in July of 25, I'll add the link in the show notes. So here's my idea, right? Here's my real problem. I don't think AI broke anything, right? I think it was kind of broken to begin with, but that's another story for another day. But what AI did was exposed things. Going back to my argument, if a student can complete your assignment without making a single decision, that's not an AI problem. That's a design problem. AI didn't create that design problem. AI just made that problem impossible to ignore. Created some chaos. What Rimney said in his article was, says if your assignment can be finished in 30 seconds by a chatbot, that chatbot didn't ruin your assignment. Your assignment was already asking the wrong question. And what he kind of said further was, the assignments are and always have been the problem. The assignments are and always have been the problem. And these assignments started to fall apart when AI really slammed on the scene because they were already fragile. They were designed to be completable, to ask the students to locate something, reproduce this, organize that. And that, my friends, is something that's easy to fake. Essays, slides, summaries, reports. Those things are easy to fake. Those are things that are easy to cheat on, right? Pretty simple. Back in my day, you could buy an essay written by somebody else. AI is just our way to do it now. It's just the 21st century way to do it. But the process, that's where the thinking lives. That's where we need to go in education. Drafts, decisions, dead ends, revisions, iteration, change. Why? Google exposed some weak assignments slowly enough that we could look away. AI is doing everything so fast that we can't pretend anymore. Now, I've been in the school for 32 years, right? And I'll tell you, this pattern isn't new. You know, when I started back in 93, in late 1900s, right? Teachers, the older teachers, the veteran teachers would say, yeah, I've seen this before. Hey, us veteran teachers. Hey, I've seen this before. And what do I mean? Before Google, where did you get your information? You went to the library and you looked it up in the encyclopedia. How many times did you copy it word for word, changing this word, that word? After Google, they just typed it into Google, copied and pasted. You know it. They did it, right? It's cheating. It's not new. Now they use AI to write it. The tool changed from the Encyclopedia Britannica to Google to Ask Jeeves, right? To now ChatGPT, right? That tool changed every time. But the gap between compliance and thinking never did. And I need to say this again before we go any further because I know how this conversation can feel. The assignments that AI can complete, most of them were built the way they are for several reasons. Pacing guides, curriculum mandates, 35 kids in 47 minutes and a unit test on Friday. I get it. That's the nature. That's where we live right now. I know those constraints. Every teacher listening knows those constraints. Every admin, every superintendent, every director of curriculum knows those constraints. This is not about blame. This is about the fact that the game has changed. And some moves are worth updating. That's the ask. So here's what AI showed us. A lot of what we called learning, kids completing tasks, filling in answers, turning things in on time, was actually something else. It was compliance. And compliance has its place. I'm not saying it doesn't. But compliance is not the same thing as thinking. And for a long time, the tools students had didn't make that gap visible. AI made that gap visible, glaringly visible with bright orange tape. And this is not a verdict or a critique on your practice, but I think of it as a starting point, right? So, if design is the problem, what does better design look like? And I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. Oh, we got another initiative coming down. You're asking me to change this. I'm asking to, I'm not asking you. I'm not saying, and I never will say, take everything you got, throw it out. We need to redesign it totally. Because you guys are doing some awesome stuff. It just needs to be updated. There's teachers out there that have done amazing lessons for 20 years. Your go-to lesson, it slams home every time. What about the other ones? Let's tweak those. Let's make them better. So let me tell you about the sequence most of us were trained in, right? Now, I had a little bit different type of teacher training, more vocational CTE based because of where I was. And I'll tell you this, and I'm not making this up. My lesson planning lesson, I had one lesson planning lesson in my years of undergraduate work. And I'm not exaggerating this at all. It was literally the professor handing me an outline that said, this is a lesson plan on that blue mimeographed paper that, the ink smears and it smells, right? That one back in the day before photocopies, right? So this is the sequence I can almost guarantee the majority of the teachers today were trained in. Vocabulary first, then content, then activity. Write down these terms, learn the concept, let's apply it, right? Right? And then over-explaining. I believe we call that front-loading the information. The problem is that sequence asks students to hold meaning before they have any context for it. You're asking them to care about a word for something they've never experienced. And that's exactly the kind of assignment AI can complete without thinking, because it was designed to be completed without thinking. And I'm not saying that we need to throw all of that away, but hear me out, right? Bear with me for a couple of minutes here. I want to tell you about this concept I learned back. I validated it back in, let's say, the early 2000s, but I kind of knew it all along. And what it is, and I kind of stole this, as you borrowed, if you will, and I kind of realized this is what I was doing. I built my practice and I built my teaching around this idea called ABC. And if you've come to some of my conference presentations and you've come to my sessions at different places, you're going to hear me talk about this. And what this is activity before content. And it's exactly what it sounds like. And this is what it is. Before I explained anything, students do something. They get their hands on the problem first. They make decisions. They hit obstacles. They figure things out. Or they don't. Before I introduce the concept underneath it. What this does is that puts the content into the brain that's already been looking for it. So let me give you a couple examples. All right. I was talking to this teacher in Iowa, and she taught at an immersion school. And they were taking their elementary kids to the corn maze, right? It was an indigenous immersion school. So they're talking all about the Native American things and all that kind of stuff. And I said to her, so you're going out there Friday, you're going to the corn and learn about corn and its history and what's involved in the culture. And I said, don't spend Thursday telling them all the terms in the Native American terms. I said, go out there. And when you're out there experiencing the stuff, that's when you introduce the content. And she kind of looked at me with this little puzzled look. And I said, the word maze doesn't mean anything to those kids until they can have a piece of corn in their hand and they can bite into that corn, or they can, whatever. Another example from my classroom, teaching a robotics unit. And the challenge was to program the robot to travel a specific distance and stop. And here's what I did. I didn't explain anything. I didn't give them a lecture on wheel circumference, and I didn't give them vocabulary, and we never put an example on the board. All I did was, here's the robot, right? Make it go 39 inches. You got 5 minutes. Go. And they do. What I saw. This is the fun part about this is where the rubber meets the road. It's a 5-minute exercise to start your day. You're probably already doing a bell ringer. So what did they do? They put the robot on the ground. Right? The robot goes zooming across the room. Great. Too far. Robot goes 1.5 inches. Not far enough. So the robot overshoots, they adjust. It undershoots, they adjust again. Some of them start doing some math in their head. Some of them get close on instinct but can't explain why. Some of them are frustrated and starting to ask the right questions. But what's going on? All of them are thinking. And what's even better is while they're doing this, I'm asking them questions about their thinking. I'm not standing up there wondering if Steve in the back corner of the room, who's probably got his phone under his desk, is paying attention, right? I'm asking him, what are you doing? What's going on with your robot? And now I'm understanding how Steve and Sally and Johnny and Frank and all those other kids, how they think in the classroom and how they think and how they process stuff so that I can put that in my head and say, okay, now I got to make sure that I do this because first set, second set, third set, fourth block, whatever, all going to be different. So now after we did this robot exercise for 5 minutes, and they might succeed and they might not, but that wasn't the point. Now I can introduce the concept of wheel circumference, of rotational distance. And now I can simplify the process through math and show the kids the process of math because they've already been wrestling with the problem. And that's what they get. And when the problem gets solved, that is ABC. That is activity before content. But wait, there's more. Right? Just like those infomercials, those late night infomercials. But wait, there's more. It's only half of it. ABC only gets you halfway there because the activity, the instinct to jump straight into vocabulary, hear the terms, write them down, now we're done. And that's where we lose again. Right? Because vocabulary without context is just memorization, which again, we need that. But the second half of ABC is what I call CBV, content before vocabulary. It's the second half. This is where you're teaching. After the activity, the students construct some concepts in their brain from their experience. Talk about what happened. We connect the math to the moment they watch the robot stop short. We start to build that understanding together. And then, only then can we name it. Accumulated error, wheel circumference, rotational distance. These words arrive as labels for something that the kids have seen happen, not definitions they memorize, names for things they've lived. Right? And when it clicks, you see it. Students start using the vocabulary naturally because they're not reciting a definition. You can ask them that on a test on Friday. But what they're doing is they're naming something they already understand. Now it has meaning. It has context. It has application. That's the sequence. That's what we're building towards. CBV is that critical thinking attribute of the portrait of a graduate in practice. And when vocabulary arrives after concept construction, students aren't memorizing, they're naming something they've analyzed and built. Right? And that's what the portrait of a graduate is describing and producing. And here's why this matters right now. An assignment built on ABC CBV is structurally resistant to AI completion. Not because you blocked AI, not because you're out to catch Johnny. I was actually in a classroom the other day that said, I've caught 20 people using AI this month. I think that's wrong. Right? Right? So it's not because we've locked it down. It's not because we've caught anybody. It's because we've built thinking into the sequence. AI can complete an assignment that asks students to produce something. Lab report, math worksheet, DBQ question, creative writing essay. AI cannot complete the moment a student runs their robot for the third time and watch it stop 6 inches short again and ask the right question. That moment belongs to the student. AI doesn't get credit for what's happened in their hands before the content arrives. Right? And what Dustin says in his article is, from his research in Frontiers in Education, says the final product is the easiest thing to fake with AI. The intellectual journey is nearly impossible. So here's what I actually think we are right now. And I don't think we're in trouble, right? We're not in trouble. We're not in trouble of losing our jobs, but we're in a reset. Maybe even, and I've said this before, I think we're in a renaissance. Think about what's happening at the same time right now. AI makes it impossible to run assignments that only require reproduction. The Portrait of a Graduate makes thinking the official goal of public education, and districts are being asked right now to redesign what learning looks like. You're probably in a PLC group, and teachers have been building towards this for years, are suddenly the most relevant people in the room. And if you really want to see this in action, go visit your special area teachers. Go to the band room. Go to the art room. Go to your tech room, right? Go to basketball practice. Go watch the guy coaching baseball. Go to football practice. That's where this stuff is happening, right? And I've been doing that for years. I've been making this argument for years, not because I was ahead of a trend, but because 32 years in the classroom teaches you what actually works. And what actually works is this: let students think first. The Portrait of a Graduate tells districts where to go. It says critical thinkers, creative innovators, effective communicators. What it doesn't say is what that looks like in a 47-minute period on a Tuesday in November when you've got a big unit test on Friday. That gap between the vision and Tuesday is actually exactly where this work lives. So, here's what I'm actually asking you to do. I'm never going to ask you to overhaul your practice. I'm not going to have you throw out what you're doing that's working. Not restructure your whole curriculum before September. No. Because you guys, again, you're doing some amazing things. What I'm going to ask you to do is add one question to the front of your design process. One question. That's it. Take one assignment. Maybe it's the one you're doing Tuesday morning, and ask yourself, can my students complete this without making a single decision? Not a hard decision, any decision. And if the answer is yes, then it's your upgrade opportunity. Put a star next to it. That's your starting point. So then ask yourself, if you got to that point, ask yourself, what would it look like if the students did something before I explained it? And it doesn't have to be this grandiose project. And it could be 5 minutes. A quick build with Lego. My favorite, you all know that. A physical demonstration. A math problem with no instructions. Hey, math teachers, you're probably doing some board work, right? You're probably doing some bell ringers. Just enough to put the experience in front of an explanation. That's your ABC entry point. And let me ask you this. If you're stuck and you don't know what to do, hey, ChatGPT, here's my assignment. Here's my project. How can I make this so these kids have to think? Use it. And then hold on to vocabulary. And if you're tempted to front load the terms, hold them. Let the students construct the idea first. Name it together after they've built it. When you do it right, you'll start to hear the vocabulary naturally. Because that's not reciting a definition that they've put on a flashcard and flipped over. That's naming something they've already understand. That's the moment. And I'm going to tell you this. The first time you do this, the first 10 times you do this, the first 15, 20, 30 times you do this, it's probably going to stink. It's probably going to be hard. You're probably going to feel a little weird. You have to give up a little bit of control, and there might be a little bit of chaos. Embrace it. Just like when you give that same lesson first period, and by 8th period you give that same lesson and it's 10 minutes shorter, same thing. You'll get there. Here's the next step in this process now. Take this to a colleague. Not to fix them. Not to say you should hear this. Just say something like, I've been thinking about how we design things. Let's talk about it. Right? Let's talk about it. You probably have a PLC group that you're meeting as a department. Bring it up in there. One conversation. 5 minutes at the start of a PLC. Standing outside your classroom in the morning, greeting kids, talking to your colleagues. Right? And if you want to go deeper into this and bring this and me into your school, into your team, and your PD calendar, I would love to be part of that conversation. That's the work that I'm doing. Right? So reach out to me. The door is always open. Now, as we close up today, we've done this before. We've done it with calculators. We've done it with Google. We've done it with YouTube. Now we're doing it with AI. And we figured it out every time. Not fast, not without pain, but we got there. And this time, for the first time in my career, we have something we didn't have before. A statewide vision that says thinking is the goal. Policy that validates what teachers have always known. And that's not a headwind. That's not a tailwind. That's the goal. The game changed. Let's update our moves. I'm Dan Thomas from the Tech Ed Clubhouse podcast. I want you to go out there and have some fun. Reach out to me and tell me how you did. Thanks for listening.